Yep, we up.
Yeah.
What up? What up? Welcome to Carbon Footprint, episode 2.
Yeah.
I don't even know if we have a name for this one, but that's all right. I'm Sean,
I'm Juan.
and we about to get into it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I don't know. I think we just call him whatever when we're.
We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. Yeah. We had a name last week. Shit was delayed a little because we had a name initially, and then we found out that Jimmy Fallon actually had a segment that was called the same thing we were about to call the show. So we couldn't use it because he had that segment on his night show. So fuck Jimmy Fallon. He's probably like the nicest guy in Hollywood too.
You know what? I recently read an interview with that guy in Howard Stern's book, and he just kind of comes off as like this really nice guy.
Yeah. And I remember when he first got that Tonight Show thing. He was like, you could tell he was so humbled. Like, I remember watching the first episode being kind of curious. Like, man, I wonder how Jimmy's gonna handle, because that's a lot of pressure, right? Then you taking over for, who did he take over for, Carson? Letterman. He took over for Letterman.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't watch late night.
Yeah, dude. And he was so, you could tell, humbled by just the opportunity and stuff like that. He just looks like a nice person. So I fuck Jimmy Fallon, but I don't mean fuck Jimmy Fallon. It's like a nice guy.
All right, man, let's get into this. Last Dance, last 2 episodes.
Oh,
What's up? I mean, listen, the first thing that I noticed on this one, actually on episode 9, man, Reggie Miller. I know the Last Dance is about the Bulls, but let's go ahead and put that on hold for right now because I got to shout out Reggie Miller. This is another guy that growing up in that time frame, I hated this dude because, again, being a Knicks fan, this dude I don't know if they would really get over on the Knicks as much, but he was always the guy at the end that you didn't want to have the ball.
yeah. I remember those, man.
But when they played the Bulls in those playoffs, and Reggie was just like, almost like, give me the rock. Like he wasn't scared.
Nah, he was fearless, man. And he weighed like 90 pounds soaking wet. But he was dumb skinny. And he was talking shit.
Yep.
To
And it never ceases to amaze me when I watch those clips when he pushes Jordan and like there's no foul called, but then he knocks down the shot, right?
Yeah, dude.
And never, believe me, never in that series did I think that they were gonna win. But Jordan actually comes out and says, yo, like, those guys, like, it was a personal thing with me.
Yo,
because they were good.
Every fucking Jordan. Every little thing he goes like,
it's a theme.
It became personal. Like the pizza man, it became personal. But yeah, he goes on to say like, yo, that was the toughest series we had, other than I think the Pistons. He said, right? It was like the toughest, dude. And Reggie, you're right, man. Reggie was remember the Spike Lee thing where he's like, yeah, choking again, and
that's right, man. Shout out to Reggie Miller, dude. Yeah. The another really memorable moment for me, Reggie Miller moment, was I think it was like 18 seconds left in the game. They're playing the Knicks. They're down by like 6, and this guy rattles off 8 points in those last 18 seconds. I think if you look it up, it's like 8 points in like 9 seconds. That's kind of like the official.
Yeah,
I want to say it was like 18 seconds left in the game, and he ends up pulling it out. And I remember sitting there watching that, going, "What is happening right now,
dude?" And to think in that era how physical it was, and Reggie was a bean, man. Like, and he held his weight, man. The shove on Jordan, and he even says that. I like how he says, I gave him a little
love tap.
And he goes, I'm going to put all the pressure on the official to call it, which is ballsy, because if it gets called, game over.
Game over.
Yeah, it's offensive foul, right? But going the other way, game over, right? So, and even, it was fucking crazy, and it just speaks to the shot that Jordan took that he missed, talks to how fucking amazing he was. Well, he double clutches, and it rattles in and out. And everyone in the stadium is like, "Oh fuck!" Like as soon as he's like, and even Reggie's kind of like, "Oh,
like,
let him get going in. It's going in." And to like, and I forgot about that, man. I just completely forgot that he missed that shot by that much. And you're going, wow. And then Phil makes a good point. He's like, "Yo, man, like they played." I think this was about the Pacers when he goes, "They played the best basketball that they were gonna play, and they were at home, and they still barely beat us,
Right.
which is telling, right? You go like, yeah, you're at home, you get the benefit of the crowd, every call, and then you still barely win. You're probably going into that really confident, going, all right, we got this.
Yeah, and the same thing happened when they played the Jazz. I don't remember if it was 97 or 98, but when, they split the games in Utah, and then they go back to Chicago, and then in game 3, they slaughtered them.
That's the 54-point game. It's
When they came out to the press conference afterwards, Jerry Sloan, the coach of the Jazz, goes, "What? That was the final score?"
like, you sure that's halftime? Like, are you sure that, dude? That was a massacre. And I had to tell them, like, dude, when we turn it on, like, no one in the league is gonna mess with us. And the Jazz, who I think had the most wins in the league that year, were slaughtering people. And they're like, yeah, look, when they want to turn it on, they're clobbering everybody, man. It wasn't, and I think so. We were talking last week about the Jordan, I think, solidified himself as the GOAT. As much as I think this thing helped make some arguments in LeBron's favor. I don't think you put LeBron as the GOAT. I think LeBron's probably 2 now. But one of the things now that you have to take into consideration is how many guys did Jordan keep from the record books in his era? Like a lot, man. Like you see your point, Reggie Miller,
Hall of Famers.
Hall of Famers, yeah, like first ballot Hall of Famers. You figure he kept, if there's a top 20 list in the NBA, 15 of them played in the Jordan era, and he kept Stockton, he kept Malone, he kept Reggie Miller, like
Patrick Ewing.
Barkley, Patrick Ewing, and the only reason Olajuwon got one was because Jordan walked away for a couple years. But you go, these are guys, like when they showed John Stockton, I'm like, oh man, I forgot about John Stockton, and he was good. The guy was balling out, and even Karl Malone was good. And you go, wow, man, those guys' place in the history books get completely washed because Jordan wouldn't let them get in there. Yeah. And then when you look at this era, you're gonna go LeBron. Again, in different eras, different everything, but you go, you gotta give it to Jordan, because you go, LeBron's era is gonna talk about Curry, they're gonna talk about Durant, they're gonna talk about Tim Duncan, probably, like in there, right? Yeah. Kobe, they're gonna, there's a lot of guys where you go, they got theirs, right? There's a lot of teams that got theirs during that LeBron era. No one got theirs once Jordan hit his 7th year. Once he got into his prime, like, okay, no one was in that, and they pretty much, whenever they wanted to turn it on, they could slaughter anyone they ever wanted. Like, it was just that 50-point performance. I went, oh wow, they actually showed up and just went, oh, we're gonna play defense and we're just gonna shut these guys. Like, we'll show you. And then I think they just kind of turn it off. Like, it's almost, I don't want to say boredom, but it's almost like I actually, so this week watching that, I thought to last week, and I went, I feel like they let Seattle win 2 games because
You feel like they got bored.
Yeah, like. No, I think legitimately just said, we're going to let them win. And I know that shit sounds crazy. Hear me out. I go, Jordan, I think he wanted to win on Father's Day. I think that
you think
meant
like
that
subconsciously?
Much. Yeah.
Or you think like outright he goes,
I think he goes, I'm not going to play as hard
it.
these games, right? If we win, we win. I think he goes, man, I don't play as hard in these games. And then Sunday, we can take it back and close it out. And he goes, oh, I'll do it there. I think he was that confident in his skill set, man. Like, I think there's nothing there. Like, I think it also, like, when you look at when he goes like, I have no problem with Gary, he could have talked shit about Gary Payton. Like, remember he laughs at the thing? I think in his mind, he's going, that's cute, man. I let you win. Like just watching that, I'm going, yeah, I was expecting him to say some asshole comment about Gary Payton. Because Gary goes, oh, I would have shut Jordan down. Gary goes in. Rightfully so. You're at that level. You should talk shit. You should feel super cool.
And to his credit, right? He actually did shut him down for those 2 games.
For those 2 games.
But
I think Jordan let that happen. I think Jordan let him shut him down. I don't know, man. I could be crazy.
That would be a crazy revelation. Almost as crazy as that damn flu game, right? Dude, I've thought my entire life since then that guy had a flu.
Yeah.
And it turns out it was food poisoning. Now, I'm sure the vast majority of us have had the flu at one point or another, right? So that in itself, right, when you think about somebody playing the sport or any sport, when you have the flu, right, is incredible. Food poisoning. I don't know if you've ever had it. I've had food poisoning. Like, you've had it as well?
Yeah.
Dude, my wife and I had it together one time. Luckily, we didn't have any kids. And we were like shut down the whole day. things coming out of both sides.
You're in bed all day.
Right? Yeah, you're in bed.
Toilet, bed, toilet,
Yeah,
bed, toilet.
so much so that at one point, she was a little worse than I was. So I drive us to the hospital, and I sit in the waiting area because she's dehydrated. They put her on an IV, right? This dude played in a finals game and did well.
Scored almost 40? Or did he get over 40? With the
It doesn't even matter, bro. He was still, the MVP of that series, even that game. It's incredible. It just speaks so much about that guy just as a human being and what you can make yourself do with your mind.
Yep.
Right? Because that was also one of the things in these 2 episodes was like being in the moment, right? And they said like no one did it better than him. And we talk about that just from, like, and I think they mentioned things like yoga and meditation and right, and all these things that kind of help to center you and to help you to be in the moment. And there was a gentleman on there, I forget what his name was or what his role was, but he was like, there's nobody that was better than being in the moment than Jordan.
Yeah, right. He didn't let anything get like into his head about, it's like he's like, I'm living in the now. Like this is where we're at. He didn't, dude, for having that kind of pressure. And you can see it obviously with some of the stuff I think since then where it got to him, right? Where you see how emotional he gets about people liking him and all that. But I think to have that kind of pressure and perform like that, man, I don't know that most people will ever understand what that's like, man. To be looked at as that. Even his teammates, man, they're like, nobody likes him, right? But they go, guy's taking us to the promised land, so we're just gonna put up with him. Like, he was bullied, and today, like, he'd never get away with any of that. I was shit, right?
Just gonna ask you that.
Oh my god, right? No.
So we have to go into that.
Yeah.
What, like, does that persona, thrive in the NBA today, or do you have guys like Kevin Durant, and shout out to Kevin Durant, no offense, but like some of the guys that are sort of deemed as like maybe like crybabies or whatever, does he go, nah, don't want to play with that guy?
I think so, man. I think in today's game, right, I think guys will say, nah, I'm not playing with this guy. I think so. I'm trying to think of a player, man. Chris Paul, man, and people go, he's an asshole, right? And you think about it, LeBron's never played with Chris Paul.
Yeah,
he's had opportunities to play with Chris Paul. He's never done it, right? Wade had chances to play with Chris Paul. I think, Chris Paul is an asshole, right? But then he doesn't have the accolades, so you don't let him get away with it. Where you go, and I think that's also the reason why LeBron didn't get to where he needed to get to. He's not an asshole. Like, you go, LeBron, you look at the JR. Remember the JR shit where LeBron's looking at him like, what the fuck are you doing, right? Yeah. That doesn't happen to Jordan, right? Because, at practice, it's not fun. Those guys look worn the fuck out even talking about it, right? When they go like, what was it? You're part of the greatest team ever assembled in sports, arguably, right? Like, there's only probably 3 teams in that conversation, right? The Patriots under Belichick and Brady, maybe the fucking Bill Russell, but I'm not even counting that. When he wins 11 titles, I don't know, man. There wasn't. Yeah, it's a different era, different time.
When everybody was like 5'5".
Yeah, exactly. It's like giving Babe Ruth credit. I'm not giving Babe Ruth credit for shit, bro. Black people and Latinos didn't play, and you broke. Fuck you. Fuck you, Babe Ruth. I'm not giving you credit for shit, right? So like, when you have minorities playing and you have guys like Babe Ruth was like 6 feet tall. He's like my height and he's towering over everyone. If you ever look at those team photos, like, no, that's not, it's 1920s. Everybody's malnourished. I think to me, you just can't, I forgot what point I was going to make about this shit.
It's right after the Spanish flu.
Yeah. And guys are clearly still recovering from that shit from the photos you see of the Yankees from those there. Like, it's just, I think those guys they don't even look happy to be there. Like, they're talking about that team, and there isn't a like, oh man, like, we're part of the greatest team all the time. It's like, that was a fucking draining time. Like, even Kerr was the most enthusiastic, I think, telling his stories. And I think because Kerr probably has seen what it's like, and I'd be really curious to see if Kerr ever writes a book, because you figure Kerr did it with that Bulls team. He did it with the Spurs. and then he did it with Golden State, right? So he's been part of three, I guess, dynasties. Each one that did it in a different way.
Absolutely.
And the Warriors are like today, the San Antonio was rigid, right? The very rigid, but you didn't have an asshole in San Antonio. I can't imagine Tim Duncan
or David Robinson.
No. In fact, David Robinson was the total opposite. He didn't even like having Dennis Rodman there because of the way Dennis was, and David Robinson I think couldn't get past the hair and everything else, where Jordan was like, I don't give a shit what you do, man. You show up here, you give me 20 rebounds, bro, wrestling, and then you show up and drop. I forgot about. It's funny, when they showed him there, I remember that.
Yes.
And I remember watching, going, doesn't that guy have a game like tomorrow night? It's like going like, and I'm like, and I saw him the night before. I remember watching that, thinking like, and I didn't know all the shit about it, right? Because I think I was maybe 11, 12 years old when it happened, but I remember watching, just going, oh shit, I just saw that guy in the game last night and he's there. Like it didn't really register. But then when you saw like, hey man, Dennis was AWOL, he didn't show up to practice, he didn't do that. And then Phil doesn't suspend him, doesn't not let him play, because I think to Phil's credit again, man, is he understood that that's what that guy needs. So I'm going to let him do that. I'm going to be pissed off about it. But at the end of the day, if he gets here and he shows up, and he puts out
and
numbers,
he's battling. They have him on the other team's star.
Yep.
He's guarding Karl Malone.
Yep. And he's grabbing, like he's schooling Malone and Ostertag, which I forgot was on that team, a big guy. And you go, he's like just crushing these guys on the boards. Yeah. And you're going, and he was partying last night and wrestling and doing, and you're going, what do I tell that guy? Hey, I don't like how it looks when you go party. Like, what? Yeah, man, I don't. Again, man, I go back to Phil and I think, wow, you talk about setting a precedent as just a leader where you go, I don't care what you do outside of these walls. Show up. Like, this is basketball, right? It wasn't like this rigid mentality. Even Chuck Daly, I think, makes a really great comment about Rodman when one of the coaches is complaining about him, where he says, you don't put a saddle on a Bronco or something like that, on a stallion or something. But he makes some comment like that, and you go, yeah. That's exactly what he is. You just got to let him be. And you put up with the antics, man. And the antics were never, he's breaking the law that we know of or doing anything else. It's like, he's got to go party and have a drink. Like, fine. I think that. But
yeah, no, absolutely, man. You just let him go. When the piece came up about the wrestling, it was even funny because I was watching it with my wife, and she's like, I remember that.
Dude,
right. And I'm thinking, we watching wrestling back then? I guess we were.
Yeah, everybody, man. WCW, Monday Night Nitro. Yeah. I remember those, man. I loved that whole thing, man. Just to see that was crazy, man. But again, Jordan, I think even he recognizing, like, Rodman, go do what you got to do. Just give me what you got when you get here. And I think, and I don't want to downplay Pippen, but remember that Game 6 where Pippen played hurt?
The back?
And the back, which it's, backs are debilitating, right?
Yes,
debilitating. Absolutely. I still think, and Jordan won't say it out loud, but I still think there's a part of him that's like, this fucking guy is hurt again. Like, remember the migraine and thing? And again, I don't think he would say Scotty's soft, because I think it just showed, I will give him credit for trying to play through that. But you go, dude's not available, man. And Dennis is available. Dennis could have done a line and 16 shots of tequila, and Dennis is grabbing 20 boards. And I think there's something to be said for that, like the availability, where Jordan, I think, looked at Pippen and is like, dude, when you're healthy and you're on the floor, again, probably, top 10 greatest player of all time. But fuck, man, like, I don't want to go as far as to call him soft, because, again, it takes backs are bad.
Definitely not. But, like when Jordan never really sustained any major injuries. How? I have no idea. Right? Like, I don't know what his training regimen was. Maybe it was sick, right? I mean, like when he talked about, and this wasn't even these last 2 episodes, but when they did the movie.
Oh, the Space Jam.
The Space Jam. And when he basically said, I need a basketball court, I need weight room, and the guys who were part of the NBA guys that were coming in there to play with him talked about, like, yo, he got up really early to do the set. And then he worked out, and then he played basketball, and then he, played golf or went out or whatever. And it's like, we don't even know when he slept.
Yeah, when did he sleep? Which, so I thought that was weird because I go, he had a fucking YMCA built, right? For him to work out in and play ball. And, you know, he even goes, oh, I didn't have my body ready for basketball. I had this thing. And then Tim Grover, who's considered by many to be, you know, probably the best, I don't even know what his title would be for those teams, but trainer, because I think even Kobe worked with Tim Grover down the line. His book is on my list of reads. I think I'm going to read that next. I've heard great things about his book, but for someone to be that focused with his body, I found it really weird that it never talks about the drinking and the smoking. You know, like, how, so you're doing all that.
He does it all the time.
He does it all, I'm like, again, this episode, I couldn't get past the fact, like, dude, there's a cigar always in your mouth. Like, how? And it's you go, he's talking about being tired and all this shit. I'm like, maybe get some sleep. Don't smoke tonight. I'm like, maybe, you know, like, and he's talking like, oh, yeah, I'm exhausted. And he's smoking a cigar.
But you know what, dude? Like, and the one thing that they never really addressed and that I remembered from, you know, from LeBron going to all of those championships in a row, when you play an 82 game season and then you play X amount of games in the playoffs and the championship, and then you do that 3 years in a row, it's like, dude, you're playing almost, and I know it's not a whole nother season, but it's damn close.
Yeah.
And so the you know the toll it takes on your body is just gotta be insane. And how do you keep, you know, like, and a lot of guys, you see that, right? They get these guys in most sports, they'll win championships, and then it's hard to repeat because you've reached the peak. Now what? Can you stay there?
It's hard to be hungry, man, I think.
That's it. It's that hunger. And that's the thing with Jordan is, like, you never question the guy's hunger and his passion for this craft, man. Like, it was, like I said, phenomenal. And I talked about this last time where I got my kids watching it with me. And I asked them today, actually, when we were done watching it. And I'm like, what did you take from this? And my one son goes, it takes an insanely amount of work to be great.
Yep. And friends and relationships and whatever else, you know, like.
I don't think he got that you sort of that those things suffer.
Yeah.
But the fact that he was able to say he's 13, right? So the fact that he was able to take that away and go, man, to be that it's like an ungodly amount of work.
It is. It's not as easy, right, as I think people would think. And yeah, man, I looked at that and I wonder if he has regrets. You know, much like, does he look back and go, man, I would have given up a ring to have maybe this relationship not severed, or I don't know, maybe more of a personal life. But I think now it's one of the directors, I think I saw on ESPN last night, where the director of it, which shout out to that guy, I gotta look up his name, but greatest documentary, I think, a sports documentary ever made. It's fitting for a guy who's arguably the greatest basketball player ever. I thought this thing was crafted so well. The storytelling, like, I could have watched all 10, I think, in one sitting. Like, absolutely. I was that sucked into it. But he made a comment about Jordan. I forget where I was going with this, but he makes a comment about Jordan. What were we just talking about? About the.
You know how we do, man.
Damn,
we just keep flying.
I forget.
So.
He was. Man, he made a comment about like his like some of the things that he said off air or that didn't make it into the documentary, but whether it was about like the relationships and stuff, man, and like what had transpired. It'll come back to me.
Well, you know what?
Yeah.
In keeping with that thought, I saw a quote today from Diana Taurasi, and she says Michael Jordan gave up his life for basketball. And when you really think about that, right? It's like, how much, you know, to your point, how much did he actually miss? How many relationships, you know, were not made or were not nourished over that time, you know, in sacrifice for the game. Yeah. And it really was like, that's all he wanted to do. He just wanted to be great at this.
At basketball.
And win championships, and really to drive the other people around him towards that goal. And then, like you said, because he did that, he probably didn't have great relationships. Like, remember with so I never knew about Steve Kerr's dad.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Right?
I had heard. I didn't know the whole story, but I heard that his dad was killed.
I'd never known that.
Yeah.
So what a, it's like, really good relationship with his dad, very similar to Jordan. Guy goes off to college. His dad goes to Beirut. His dad even sort of has a dream, and I can't remember, but it was something with with teaching, and he was trying to get the folks that are going to the school over there to sort of be like almost like worldly humanitarians and to be empathetic of a worldview versus a United States view.
Yeah, I think he wanted to like fix the relationship. I think between that region of the world and America, and yeah, I think his dream was to kind of see that as, hey, we just there's a lack of understanding here. We're not as far apart as you guys think, and I think his dream was to kind of like, I think, unite those two fronts because and to this day there's a big, I think, disconnect between this part of the world and
Absolutely.
that part.
And
I remember, I'm going, sorry.
No, go ahead, go.
It was, the director said that Jordan showed up to a lot of the interviews by himself. He didn't have security. He didn't have an entourage. He didn't have, so, I was thinking about that and I'm going, could he couldn't have done that.
Which interviews?
25 years. So, the ones where they look like they're in his house. So it's not actually in his house. It's like in his neighborhood or not too far from his house. They rented houses to do these interviews in because he wouldn't let them do it.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know either. So I'm watching this, and I'm pretty sure, I think it was on Scott Van Pelt's show or something last night where they were talking about kind of the series, and then they had the director call in and he's talking about, and actually there's a great, like a further, about the pizza thing, it gets even further than that. But so he goes, yeah, I was shocked at a couple of times or two. I guess they interviewed him a few times. He said 2 or 3 of them, he showed up without an entourage. It was just him. He drove up in his car and pulled up to the house and we did our thing. And, and I think, we talked about this last episode where I go, he couldn't have done that in the 90s, right? He was the most famous person on the face of the earth. And we didn't have the internet the way we have it today. We didn't have social media. We didn't have all this stuff. It's just crazy to think that someone's face is that recognizable, right? And I think part of him walking away was always I want to sort of live normal. So when he said that, he's going, yeah, he drove himself. He did that. And I go, I think Jordan likes that. I think he's got to find a way to scratch that itch competitively. But I think that was his ultimate goal, right? And I think the whole, it kind of goes back to him being an asshole and putting in all that work and doing all that stuff. He's going, I left that behind. I had to do that back then. And now I just want to be a guy. And I think as a guy, I think he clearly still struggles with scratching that. Because how do you scratch that at 57, right? That competitive itch when you were that elite. You gamble. Yeah. I mean, you get, like, I keep going back, like, what moves you if you're him? But I think that, honestly, man, I think that about a lot of guys, man. I think that about Elon Musk. I think that about Jeff Bezos. Like, what feels risky to you? Like, what moves you? What do you get and you sweat about it and you're like, oh, this is... And even Jordan, I go gambling, unless he's never gambling enough that his livelihood is on the line, right? But I think it's still the rush of it, a little bit. Yeah, it has to be. It has to be. But yeah. I thought, and then the director was also talking about the pizza thing. Because I'm like, man, Jordan's an asshole. He didn't share the pizza. And he spit on the pizza when it got there because the guy.
Oh, no, I missed that.
Yes. So, well, it wasn't on the documentary.
Oh, okay,
he talks about it on ESPN. It's great. He goes, well, yeah, the guys ate earlier that night. And I don't know what Jordan was doing. I don't know if he was at the gym or whatever, but he goes, Jordan was late and the guys ate without him. They ordered food and they ate without Jordan. And I guess they were on the outskirts of Salt Lake City. They weren't even in the city. So it's not like things were open. And he goes, so he tells the guys, like, yo, man, give me pizza, give me anything, something to eat or whatever. And they make the calls. And when it gets there, he's like, no, man, you guys ate without me. This shit's mine. No one's touching his pizza. And he spits on the pizza.
Let me tell you, I've been to Utah probably around that time frame, maybe early 2000s. Like Salt Lake City.
Salt Lake City. Okay, yeah. See, I didn't go till a few years ago. Yeah.
And this is way off topic here, right? But okay, but I gotta tell this story. So my wife and I, we're there. My cousin and her husband at the time are doing like a movie premiere. They actually came out with a movie for Sundance Film Festival.
Oh, cool.
Right? So we go there, we hang out for like a day or two, and then we're leaving on a Sunday. And I'm like, hey, like, let's just go. We have a couple of hours before the flight. Let's go check out Salt Lake City. Because I want to say it was in like, is it Park Slope or
Oh, Park City. I think
Park
that's where-
City?
yeah, I
That's
think
the
you're
one.
right. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
it.
yeah.
That's it.
I think you're right. I think Park City is where.
So we go into, it's a Sunday. We go into Salt Lake City, and we're driving. And I don't know if you ever seen that movie, Children of the Corn,
Yep.
bro. No. You don't understand. We drive in. There are no cars driving. This is a city, bro. There's no cars on the road. Now, again, Salt Lake City may have changed between then and now. I have
It
no
did.
idea. But
You ever
no,
heard anybody say, "Oh, I'd really like to hit Salt Lake"?
not unless they're going skiing.
Yep.
But so we go and we're driving around there, right? And there's no cars, right? And I'm going, yo, like maybe, like what's going on? Like where's all the people? And then finally I see like one car. So we're still driving around. I see this like mall. And there's a couple of cars parked there. So we park, we go in the mall, and there's open stores, but like there's maybe like 5 people in the mall. And I finally asked, like, yo, like what's
This
going
is a
on?
weekend, you're saying, right?
This is a Sunday.
Sunday.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I find somebody and I'm like, what's going on? And they go, oh, everyone's at the Tabernacle or whatever whatever their church is called. But before getting to actually see somebody, like I was almost scared, like almost like, yo, this is like some movie shit, right? This is like some Children of the Corn. Somebody's coming out the woodwork with a pitchfork or something. Like we're about to leave. I think we walked around the mall for maybe like 10 or 15 minutes and then just realized, let's just go to the airport.
Wow. Yeah, I'm trying to think. When I think of Salt Lake City, I think of The Hills Have Eyes. Like, like I've been to Salt Lake, I think twice, and it was on a layover. Thank goodness. And even from flying into it, beautiful scenery, the landscape or whatever. When you're flying in, that airport's awkward because you're going into over a mountain and then you drop in. It's really crazy. Like if you're like afraid of flying, it's the last airport you want to fly into. Which I'm not afraid of flying, but I could see people in there just gripping, like clenching, just ooh, because you drop suddenly when you go over. If you've never flown to Salt Lake, you've got to do it. It looks beautiful flying in, but what do you do in Salt Lake City? Ski, and then
Ski.
That's it, right? Like,
I think so. Or go see the Jazz.
yeah, not anymore.
Not anymore.
Well, Donovan Mitchell might have
maybe
changed
it
that.
was
maybe.
98.
Yeah, I don't.
But dude, let me go back. Let me go back to so Steve Kerr, right? So he has his father. His father goes over to Beirut. He's like the president of the school or whatever. Gets 2 shots in the head. Right? So him and Jordan really came up similarly, like whole families, really close to their dads. And he says like they never talked about that. Like, how do you not? Like, how do you?
Would you though?
Dude, listen, a basketball team, this is not like a football team, bro. This is not like 50-something guys. You're talking about a fairly intimate setting.
Yeah.
You guys are practicing day in and day out. How many of them? What is there? 20, maybe?
Maybe. I mean, players is probably like 12 or 13.
That's what I'm
And then
saying.
You go.
So you're talking about that, right? And I know that every time, like, when they showed sort of like, I think it was like Jordan's trainer was like one of his good friends, and then there was another guy who was like one of his good friends.
His best friend is also his assistant.
That one. So you have so you're on a team with arguably the greatest basketball player ever. You guys have, at least in some respect, similar stories. Like, you don't talk about, dude, like, that shit still hurts. Like, how did you deal with that?
I don't think Jordan would, man. I
No?
think Kerr would have. I think Kerr would have jumped at the opportunity, right? I think Kerr strikes me as someone who would have probably had that conversation. I think Jordan was so worried about not looking weak that to him would have been too far.
You think even to his teammates?
Yeah, I do. I think, how many teammates have you seen him that he's friends with now? None. Like, I look at Jordan the same way I would look at like a CEO. I'm trying to think of someone like Bob Iger who runs, whatever, Disney or
Yep.
like I think everyone looks at him and goes, "Oh, snap, that's Jordan." Like, you don't share your, like any of us, how we look at our boss. Like, I'm not telling him about my personal issues unless it has something to do with the job. I think Jordan is that way too. I think Jordan puts up that wall and goes, "No, I'm this killer," which makes, to me, the food poisoning game now more impressive because you see when he holds on to Scotty during that timeout and I'm going, he's showing a moment of weakness. He's leaning.
Right.
He's clearly beat up, right? And you go, oh, there's zero chance he's faking that. Like, because I think if Jordan could have gotten away with not holding on to Scotty and making it to the bench, he would have done it because I think he's that concerned with looking like he doesn't want to look weak. So I think that even made it when I saw that scene, and that's infamous. You see it all the time with him grabbing Scotty. I think I had more of an appreciation this time because he was really hurt because Jordan to me was so concerned about not looking weak that he would hold on to a teammate like that and had to get almost carried off the court. I was like, wow, he was really hurt. And then just turned it back on the minute the clock came back on. It just shows, again, you were talking before about being able to flip that switch. I don't know if it's adrenaline or what it is, but I remember just watching that and just being more impressed this time around. Obviously, hearing that it's food poisoning makes it more impressive. But then I think knowing what you know about Jordan, the way they framed him, and even though I will say that I felt like these 2 episodes, they try to humanize him. They talked more about his relationship, the bodyguard that he had that kind of became like
Gus.
a father figure. Yeah, Gus.
Yep.
I think it almost felt like they edited those episodes between last week and now because they're probably going, all right, guys, he looks like an asshole. Let's throw, maybe not, right? But I felt like these last 2 they tried to humanize him a little more and tried to make him, like, oh, he's just like you guys. Yet, they talk about him crying and calling, and kudos to him because I didn't think he would let them use footage like that. I didn't think he'd let them talk about like, man, this guy called crying at 2 a.m. talking about how much he misses his dad, which you understand, but I just can't picture Jordan doing it. But I think,
And he called Gus.
Gus,
right?
yeah.
He called Gus. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And I think the other thing that they talked about was him surrounding himself with those. If you looked at all those guys, he surrounded himself elderly, right? Or not, I shouldn't say elderly, but much older than Michael.
No, older than him.
Yeah.
Like mentors. Almost.
Yeah, mentors. And I think, again, smart. He didn't surround himself with hangers-on that wanted him for his money or other kids or other peers, right? He says it. He goes, I wanted people who had life experience, who could kind of guide me. And that just shows his brilliance. Again, I mean, we talked about his business brilliance last week, but I think, again, this showed he's in this predicament where no one in the world will understand what it's like to be him. But then also he's in a predicament where everything he's experiencing is for the first time. And he can't go to anyone and say, hey, how do you handle this? Because no one can answer that. But he surrounds himself with a bunch of guys who have maybe some life experience, and he can draw a little bit from here and he can draw a little bit from there. And so, I thought, again, that spoke to not just the maturity level, but I think how brilliant he was as a person. He thought things through. I think that was by design for sure.
Yeah, and I think that and then one of those mentors, right? He really clings to, which is Gus, as the father figure. So it's like, not no one can ever replace your dad, but this guy is almost like his second father, right? He's the guy he looks to for sort of maybe more emotional support. And then the other guys around in his entourage, like you said, he kind of pulls from because they're older and they have life experience.
Yeah.
So with that, and I got to ask you this, man, because they talk about, the last year, right? So when this whole thing first starts and it's the end of or it's the beginning of the 1997-98 season, when Jerry Krause goes, this is it, Phil's out of here, love to have Jordan back, right? Like, is he a genius? Or like, is he, does the fact that he announces that in the beginning, does that drive the team to excellence? Or does it, or were they going to do it anyway?
That's a great question, man, because so when I look at it, right, being petty, I look at that and I go, I'm going to find a way to stick it to you. And maybe their way of sticking it to you was, we're going to win a title and then we're going to walk off into the sunset, right? or I think you mail it in. And maybe you're so competitive that it just, your ego doesn't let you mail it in, right? And maybe what you do is you go that route and you just go, we're going to show this guy that we're the greatest team ever assembled, and we're going to go ahead and win this title. And then he's going to break us up, and he's going to look like an asshole. And I saw the owner, Rindo, tried to supposedly keep Phil and then keep Michael, but it almost sounded like he was trying to keep Michael and saying, hey, let's rebuild around Michael and get rid of the other guys. When I look back on that era, I'm obviously disappointed that I didn't get to see Michael, I think, ride it through. I go back and forth because I want to say you want to go out on top, and he makes that comment when he's with Ahmad Rashad in the Rover. They're driving to a game or something. He goes, I want to retire 2 years too soon. And I wonder if you saw those series started to get more competitive. Like the Pacers series, right, was a little more competitive. I don't think Utah was that much of a threat, I think, but I wonder if he looked at that and went, man, we could have gotten pushed out here in the Eastern Conference Finals potentially by Indy. They're going to get it together, right? Because I think Indy was in that Eastern Conference Finals the next year against the Knicks. I'm pretty sure they were. And the Knicks, I think that's when San Antonio beat the Knicks in the finals. I think it was that next 98, 99. Yeah, pretty sure it was around there, but that or 99, 2000. But anyway, like, I go back to, okay, you don't want to see him deteriorate. So, they walked out on top and he just walks off into the sunset. The other part of me, Jordan makes a comment about, no, you got to beat the champ, right? It's the boxing thing, right? We always say it all the time, like, no, you got to knock the champ out. And I would have loved to see that team get beat by somebody. I think, right? I think I would have liked to see them get beat because I think it removes the doubt of, would he have won the seventh, right? Like, he thinks so now, and of course you're going to say that, but you go, knowing how close that Indy series was, and then that Indy team was there again. And now you got another year of the beatdown on your body. Who knows what version of Scotty you get. I don't think Scotty was leading the league in anything after that. Like, Scotty pretty much was downhill after that.
Yeah, like, I remember him being good in Portland, but there's nothing memorable about that time that
you
really...
go, he's going to win a title, right? Like, yeah. So, yeah, because Krause, I think he rolled the dice much like he did most of his career. He rolled the dice on every decision. They all just happened to work up until you rolled the dice on this one. It didn't work. The Bulls been rebuilding ever since, right? The Bulls haven't gotten back to anything, really. Right? The closest thing they had was those Derrick Rose teams, yep. Which, God, you remember how stupid people were talking about taking Derrick Rose over LeBron during that run? Jeez. A 6'1" guard who plays like pedal to the metal the entire time, and no one thought, oh, this guy's probably going to break down at some point in time, or he's 6'1", he can't carry. Like, Iverson taught us nothing. I remember Iverson is amazing, right? But you can't be 6'1" and carry a team to a title. He tried, and he played against, and unfortunately he ran into those Laker teams that were, all time as well. But the Derrick Rose thing, I remember blowing my mind at the time, going, you guys think Derrick Rose is better than LeBron James? Like, he's going to carry a team?
I mean, he was a sick talent, right? I mean, he really was. So going back to that last year, right? And we know Jordan was getting the big contract, right? Where he's getting something like 25 to 30 mil, something around there. I was thinking about it as I'm watching it, and I'm going, this guy was underpaid.
Mike?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Thinking about what, because what they go into, and David Stern says it best, right? When he goes, prior to this era, we're in what is it, like 60 to 70 countries, and then afterwards they're in like 215, and don't quote me on that, but 215 countries.
Yeah, it was something crazy. Yeah,
something like
right.
that,
You're
right?
Close. Yeah.
And it's like the impact that he had on the game, and the impact that he had just on the NBA in itself, and how the NBA was able to expand because of that era, is like, and then you paid him 30 mil. Yeah, that was great money at the time for a 1-year deal. But how much was that guy worth to the NBA?
Oh, to TV contracts and to the owner of the
everything,
Bulls as a
bro.
franchise, right? Like, how much were the Bulls worth?
No,
at
I'm
that time?
talking. I'm talking. I mean, obviously the Bulls are the ones paying him, and they're the ones taking the salary hit, and I get that. But from an NBA standpoint, like how much does the NBA owe to that guy?
Oh,
And this is always, money's always a funny thing, man, because people are funny about money, right? They look at athletes and they say, oh, they make millions of dollars, they play a game, blah blah blah. Yeah, I get it.
yep. Should have learned to play basketball.
But when you can look at them and say it's not really about them playing a sport, is that they're actually doing something that's generating revenue, right? So let's just put it at that.
Yeah, we buy tickets and we tune in.
Right. You buy tickets, you buy merchandise,
Buy
you
merch.
tune in, right? It's the whole package. Back in, and it just brings me back in like I want to say it was around 98. Maybe no, I want to say maybe 2000. It was when Shaq got that big contract when he went to the Lakers.
Oh, yep.
Actually, the Magic gave him the contract, and then he got traded to the Lakers.
No,
Remember?
I think he
It was
turned
a sign
down.
and trade.
He turned. Was it a sign and
I
trade?
think it was sign and trade.
Oh, I think you're right
they were
because the
giving him
Magic
max.
could give him the max. Yep, you're right. But he asked to be traded.
He has to be traded.
So, yep.
So sign and trade.
I think you're right. Yeah.
And so I was in an economics class, and you know this gentleman. So shout out to Jack Chambliss, Valencia
Oh
Community
yeah,
College.
Valencia Community College. Actually, it's Valencia College
Valencia
now.
College
Yeah.
now. That's right. But this guy, and it was so great. So he comes into the class, and he goes, Shaquille O'Neal's underpaid. Right? And the class erupts.
Of course,
Right?
Again, it goes to the financial envy and the stuff we talked about last week, where people are just
The class erupts, and he just puts together a quick argument of why Shaquille O'Neal with this max contract that at the time is unprecedented, unheard of, right? No one's making more than him at that time. Like he was the dude.
No, he got a fat.
He got a crazy.
It was a crazy contract, but also it came at the heels of this Jordan team, right? It came.
It was after. Yeah, I want to say it was like 2000. Maybe even
No,
01.
I think it was 98-ish, man.
No, I'll tell you why it's not 98, because I came out of the Marine Corps 98 and I didn't start college until like 2 years later. So it had to be at least 2000.
Because I felt like
Maybe the
Shaq
contract-
left Orlando. Yeah, maybe the contract was
the
before,
contract
but
was
he
before
talked
that.
about it then. Because Shaq left Orlando in the 90s, for sure.
That's fair. That's fair. It could definitely happen in the late 90s.
Because it was that 97, 98 team, they beat him. No, maybe 96, 97. So I think Shaq left 97, 98. He had, I want to say Zell Harris as the coach in LA for like 2 years before Phil.
Before Phil.
And Phil takes the year off and then goes.
Yeah.
99, 2000, I think Phil goes to LA. And Shaq and Kobe are already together. Yeah. But yeah, go ahead, Zar.
No. But that, like, going back to Jordan and his worth, forget about to the Bulls, to the NBA, is like, it's crazy. The impact that he has to the NBA, the impact, the global impact. Like, how much was that guy actually worth?
For sure. No, I agree. I think he changed a league, a company, the economics of it. I think we talked a little last week about, even from a player standpoint, I think that team changed the control players had, right? Because they didn't have any. And then I think now players have all the control. But I think the economics of it, Jordan definitely, I think, set that, and it took off. Because the NBA wasn't the NBA that it is today when Jordan got in. The endorsements weren't there. Like, everyone had a sneaker deal with Converse or whatever it was, but it wasn't like high-end dollars. They were making like $1 million or $2 million per year. And you know, I'm going to say Oni, but again, based relative to the money that they're worth to the league, that was nothing. Right, as a percentage, I think I do remember taking that. I also took a class with Jack Chambliss at Valencia, and I remember him using like a percentage of whatever an average worker was. Let's say it was a construction worker, but I remember him taking and saying, "Hey, they represent X percent of the expense of whatever it was," and he did that for Shaq, or I think actually when I took it, he did it for Alex Rodriguez.
Oh,
And
that was a big one.
That was a big one at the time, and this was like mid 2000s, and he said. yeah, Alex Rodriguez was underpaid, right? And then people were like, "Are you nuts?" But then he showed like what, obviously from a revenue perspective, and then I think when he talked about what Alex is worth to the Yankees in terms of revenue, and then he basically showed like, hey, as a percentage of revenue, Alex is underpaid. And again, people are gonna say you're crazy. They make all this money, but if your employer is making X and you get, let's say I don't know, Alex got a $300 million deal, but if that deal to the Yankees was worth $5 to $8 billion, probably more, you go, because for whatever reason, baseball contracts are billions. Like the TV rights are like billions. Who the fuck watches baseball in 2020 is beyond me. Like, honestly, even during this thing, when they talked about watching or playing games without fans, who the fuck would notice in Tampa that there's no fans in the stadium if they had to play without fans? No one.
It's normal.
It's normal. No one would know. They'd be like, "Oh, guys, fans aren't allowed here." They'd be like, "Oh shit, we thought it was just a typical Friday night in Tampa." Like, dude. So one of the things I really wanted to get into, man, was the infamous Game 6, right? The last game of MJ in the Bulls uniform. That 40 something seconds of just Leonardo DiCaprio had the best description of it, which was poetic. And you almost go, you have to end your career on that, because it was beautiful to watch. And watching it just gave me like all kinds of emotions, because I remember watching it as a kid, just like it just, again, I think sports has a way of bringing out emotions in people. I think that's, part of this lockdown too has been like the lack of sports. It's one of the things that unites people, no matter where you're from or what you think. I think if you root for the same team, there's something about sports, right? So I got real emotional kind of watching it. And listen, full disclosure, I teared up a few times watching these 10 episodes, man. Like just not even on a sad thing, just feeling how there's something, I think, to me about seeing people succeed at a certain level and seeing people get emotional about stuff that kind of moves me. But I think Jordan's physical greatness is something that's always looked at. The mindset, his basketball IQ, to me, was something that I didn't appreciate until I rewatched that Game 6 and that segment. And then even I went back a year. Okay, so let me I guess bring context to what I'm talking about. The year before, they're playing the Utah Jazz in the finals, and he talks about Brian Russell playing defense on his toes. Yep. And he goes, I know if I give him the shake, his momentum takes him that way, which makes sense. And he goes, and I know he can't stop because it's physically impossible, right? So he goes, so I know he plays on his toes, so I give him a little shake. Brian Russell bites, and he hits a shot, wins that game. And this was in the finals the year before. Fast forward to the Game 6, and so he goes up, he hits that layup, right? Blows past Brian Russell, hits that layup off the top of the glass, brings it to within one. And then that's when the next sequence he gets the steal off of Karl Malone.
Right.
When he comes back up, which, I love that Bob Costas goes, listen, it wasn't a shove. It's the equivalent of a major D taking you to your seat, which I thought, thank you. Bob Costas was there, can see it. Someone who I respect, I think, who's seen it all, right? Seen thousands of games, has called them. But I think what you saw there was Jordan, again, knowing Brian Russell plays on his toes. The last series, I blew past him. And I got to the rim pretty easily, right? The shot was difficult because he had to hit it a little higher because there was guys meeting him at the rim who helped out Russell. But I think all that, and even when he's narrating it, he's going, yeah, I'm dribbling up. I'm thinking about do I go to the rim? Do I take a shot? Do I do this? And then he takes the 2 steps when he just goes, and Brian Russell commits. He plays defense on his toes, and he goes, oh shit, Jordan, last series. And as a player, if you don't think that these guys are thinking that, they're absolutely thinking that, right? And if you don't think Jordan goes, I set this up last play because I blew past him, so now I'm going to go and I'm going to blow 2 steps and then immediately crosses over. And Brian Russell's momentum is already taking him in that direction, and he can't stop. Yeah. Regardless of where that hand was, and Jordan gives him the little nudge. I think it's more of a, hey, you're passing by me, right? And then pulls up and hits, to me, the most memorable shot in the history of sports and anything was that shot. Just him holding it, you see the look on everybody's face, right? And all these people in Utah who have nothing else to look forward to, right? And they're looking at Jordan. He's holding up his shot. And before the ball even goes in, you can just see the despair on these people's face, right? And I just kept thinking, like, man, his basketball IQ is something that wasn't talked about, I think, enough in this documentary. Because, again, he set it up the move before. He takes off and I think immediately pulls back. And because the play before he took off and got to the rim so easily, Brian Russell has no choice but to commit, because you can't let him blow past you again. And because he plays defense on his toes, on the ball of his feet, you can't stop. It's physics, right? So you can't stop, and he commits. And Jordan just the greatest shot of all time in any sport, just pulls back and then hits that pretty jumper. And just the appreciation that I had for it this time around, when they put into context the, like, okay, he hits his shot. No one else on the Bulls touched the ball the last like minute or 42 seconds or whatever it was. No one else on the Bulls. And in fact, I think it's hilarious that Scotty goes, I just thought, get the fuck out of the way. Rodman goes, zero chance he passes the ball. No one is getting this but MJ. Like, no one. And everyone in the building, I think, knew. Like, no one. And then Brian Russell, who, listen, okay player, but the fact that Brian Russell still holds the, like, he shoved off me, is whatever. Like, listen, he got you with the same move almost the last year with the same kind of pump, and then pulls the shot up. Now, the difference this time was the play before where he drives to the basket. So this time he faked the drive to the basket, pulls back, and Brian Russell takes off. And I love that move. And I remember as a kid watching it and just screaming. And I had like a little 13-inch color TV in my room. And it's like Sunday night. And I'm not supposed to even be up watching this. And I remember just screaming like, oh my God. Like, and it just brought me back to that. And I just had such an appreciation for the craft that was like, you're Jordan, you're dribbling up. You're like, what am I going to do? And I think 100%, and I wish they would have talked about it, that he goes, last time up the floor, I blew past him. He's going to think the same. I'm just going to go ahead and take off. And he just floors it and pulls back. And I think that was planned. I think it was by design. I think he set it up to play before. And just such a brilliant move, man, that, again, I think to me, and I'm like, I got to get a picture of that shot and framed and put it up somewhere, probably in the studio here. But, like, it just... the greatest shot ever taken, I think, in any sport to win anything was that.
It was, and it was a phenomenal move. And you know, I'm watching these episodes with a different appreciation, because back then, I gotta say, man, I was a Jordan hater, right? from being a Knicks fan,
every other Knicks fan,
to being I mean, I was a Magic fan for a while after I moved down here, right? And you know, and just seeing him really, like, deprive all of the greats of championships, right? And of course, that happened. Two of them happened to be my team during that era. So every time he made it back, I'm rooting for the underdog every time. And even though, and you know what's funny? So they still went in there as favorites, even though the Jazz that year were better than the year before.
They slaughtered everyone.
And I want to say they beat the Bulls during the year.
Yeah, I think they said they were 2-0 again. Like, they hadn't beat Utah or
right.
whatever it was.
They were the only ones that had not.
That they hadn't beat. Yep, you're right. Yeah.
So here I am, you know, and when he makes that shot, I'm like, damn, again. Yeah. You know, but going back, but looking at it now, is, you know, it's a new appreciation. I mean, and you know, I can, after the guy retired and everything, and I can always look back and go, damn, I hated him, man, but he was great. And then now watching this special, it's like, man, you know, I wish I would have just kind of had that same mindset of just like, hey, I'm watching somebody great now, and just enjoy the fact that you're watching somebody great, which is what I do now, right? Like, I'm still a Magic fan, right? But I'm not a fanatic. But I love to watch great players, because I don't want that to happen to me again. I do it in football too, where I'm a Bears fan, but damn if I don't like watching Aaron Rodgers play.
Yep.
Like, I don't like.
And that's sacrilegious for a
Bears
fan.
Yes, absolutely, man. And I hate the Packers, right? But man, to this guy is a phenomenal quarterback. Right. So now, like as I'm older now, and I'm watching these games now, I tend to watch players. I still have my teams, but I like watching greatness. I like watching great players do great things and rise to moments.
Yep. No, I hear you. I think I definitely have more of an appreciation for players now. Obviously LeBron, Kobe. I think I watch LeBron now and I go, man, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, we're going to look back and go, look what this guy did, with what little he had. Kobe, I think we'll look back and really appreciate some of the things he did. And, with the Kobe thing, I remember it being risky. Like they let Shaq go and picked Kobe over Shaq, right? I don't know if you remember that, that whole thing. One of them had to go. And you go, they were right. It took them a couple of years to pay off. They had to get the right team around Kobe, but it paid off. And I think I didn't appreciate back then the Kobe. I think looking at it now, same as you, as I have this appreciation for these great players. Even in the NFL, I watch guys. There's guys who I think are one and done, or you can have a great year, one or two. As a rookie, as a sophomore, some of these guys come out and they ball out. In the NFL, I always look at it as what happens when people have tape on you. And they've got 16, 32 games of tape and they know your weaknesses. So show me what you do then. And I think people like Patrick Mahomes, I think at the time I went, man, great, do it consistently. And Patrick's gotten to the point where I'm going, okay, Patrick's special. Lamar Jackson, I'm still on the fence on, right? I think Lamar had a great first year. Okay, let's see you do it for 2 or 3. It has to be sustainable. But I think just enjoying, I enjoy Rodgers. I enjoy, as a Titans fan, it hurts to watch anybody in the AFC. But Peyton, I think watching Peyton and going, wow, just a masterful command of the game, And yeah, I think watching this Jordan thing, you go, I wonder if at the time people knew how great. John Stockton makes a great point at the time where he goes like, no, he's just another player. He's obviously Michael, but listen, we got to think how we think, because if we go into that thinking like, oh my God, this is Michael Jordan, these are the Bulls, we're going to lose. And I think if at that point they're almost peers, right? They're probably like, they're another basketball team like we're a basketball team. And I think Stockton probably looks at himself and Karl Malone going, oh, we've got 2 first ballot Hall of Famers. Like, we've got a shot here. This isn't impossible.
Remember, those guys were dream teamers too.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. I go, if you look at that dream team, how many guys on that roster do we not talk about because of Michael? I mean, other than Larry and Magic, right?
Yeah, I'm saying most of them.
Most of them you don't talk about because Jordan kept them from getting their due. And I just kept thinking about them like, wow, man, Barkley's known more now as an announcer than he was as a player. Right, like, because he's fun and he says whatever comes to mind. I love Barkley as a commentator. I think people recognize Barkley more from that than they do as a player. Even to this, when I saw highlights of Barkley playing, I'm like, man, I forgot how good he was. And you go, and Reggie, you talk about those games of Reggie, the push off, how he tortured. And growing up in Jersey, you get a lot of Knicks games, right? So I watched a lot of Knicks games. I was a Nets fan growing up, still a Nets fan, but Reggie was, when he came to town, you were just like, oh, Reggie, and we don't talk about Reggie Miller anymore, man. And that's because of MJ, right? Like, you're not going to look back and from 2005 to 2025 and go, yep, that was so-and-so's era. Or even 2005 to 2015, yep, that was Jordan's era. You're going to go, there was a little bit of LeBron, there was a little bit of Duncan, there was a little bit of Kobe. We're going to look back on Jordan's era, the 90s, and go, Jordan. And he kept everyone from the record book. Everyone, like all-time greats kept them from the record book.
Well, even earlier we talked about the Rockets winning their 2, and it was like it's almost forgotten. Because of that. What the hell? And I forgot what the hell they called it. It's like the repeat, three-peat.
Yep.
The repeat, three-peat. Yep. Like, oh man, what a great name, right? But that will forever own the 90s.
Do you think, it's hypothetical, right? But do you think, a lot of people go, they would have won 8 in a row. Do you think that would have happened?
Could they have? Absolutely. Would they have? Again, and I think I go back to the wear and tear on your body when you're playing the 82-game season plus the playoffs and the finals. And when you do that every year, and then you throw in a couple of Olympics in there, that's it becomes a mental game at that point, right? It's not only physical wear and tear on your body, it's also a mental game, and it's difficult. Could you know MJ could he have the mindset to do it? Absolutely. Could he bring everybody else along for that ride? I don't know.
You know what's stood out to me the most, and I don't know why, but it was like the first thing I jotted down. I grabbed my phone and I took a note because I wanted to make sure I brought this up, and I think it's because it was more surprising than anything. Phil Jackson during, it's either game 1 or game 3 or something. It's a game in Utah, and they're getting just bashed. I mean, just smoked. And it's like the first quarter, it's halftime or something like that. And there's a timeout, and Phil Jackson goes, this is a scary fucking situation. Like, get your goddamn heads in the game. And I remember thinking, holy shit, aren't you supposed to be the Zen master? And he sounds panicked. Like, he goes like, guys, this is a scary, like the way he says it, you're going, oh shit. Like, because you have this reverence, I think, of Phil Jackson of just being so calm all the time and that Bulls team being so dominant. And to hear Phil go like, yo, this is, I think he sensed like it can get out of hand. It's the obviously the physical nature of you're beat down. It's a long season. Like get your shit. But the mental aspect of anything of what does an ass whooping like this do to you mentally? Right. And if you're Jordan, it motivates you next game to drop, 60. If you're the rest of that team, it's demoralizing. Like he even tells Ahmad Rashad, he goes, stay the fuck away from Scott Burrell. You're not allowed to talk to Scott Burrell, because Ahmad Rashad makes a comment like there's the ones who can and the ones who can't. And I think he senses like most people have fragile psyches, right? Don't say that to Scott Burrell, because Scott Burrell can't handle that. And I just thought it was, to me, hearing Phil Jackson, someone who I have so much respect for, and I think most people have respect for, thinking of he's always keeps his cool, saying something like that just shows, I think he understood the moment. I think if that series goes 7, they probably don't win. I think the mind games of what does it again, and they did lose. They got blown out, I think, in that game. Maybe it came down to a last shot or something, but I think he understood the mind games of what a loss like that could do to you. Because for him to say this is a scary fucking situation, when you're up 2-0 or whatever it was at the time.
Yeah, I don't recall which game.
Yeah, I can't remember what the game was, but I just remember him saying that and me going, oh wow. Like Phil Jackson just said, this is a scary situation. Someone who's always so calm. So, you talk about the meditation where he does the thing with the letters and, again, just ahead of his time, I think, in sports, because sports was such a alpha thing and we're men and we keep our feelings buttoned in, blah, 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 right? And for him in 98 to go like, we're going to write our feelings down, and MJ writes a poem, which I would pay like a ridiculous amount of money to know what Jordan's poem said, but I think it spoke to how, I think him being on the tail end and probably spitting his thoughts on a piece of paper of like, this is what this meant to be. I would have loved to hear something like that. I'm kind of glad they didn't, because it keeps the mystique around it, but just knowing that something like that happened to me
because
was
it was probably cool. Bad.
Yeah. It's like, y'all suck. I'm tired of carrying you. Yeah. Shout out to Steve Kerr for hitting one shot. And so,
But no, very, very true about, like I said, that's why they call him the Zen Master, right? Kind of kept things in control. It actually reminds me of not him being chaotic, but the Zen. There's an old story of Joe Montana, like Super Bowl, I believe they were playing against the Bengals. They're down. It's the last drive, and the team gets into the huddle, and obviously the time's running, clock's running down, right? So this is it. It's either do or die. And he goes, "Hey guys, look, it's John Candy in the stands." And so everybody looks over, and it's like, oh shit, yeah. And then he's like, and then he just calls the play, and then but everybody, the guys in the huddle are just like we're good. Like our leader, like he got it.
He's watching people in the stands.
Yeah, like calm. He's got it.
And we talk about that all the time. Of there's such a difference between people who are James Harden can put up 50, can score at will, almost whenever he wants to, except when it matters. Right? Like there's a difference between there's that it thing. It's the Derek Jeter thing, right? Derek Jeter not gonna hit he's not gonna hit 50 home runs a season. He's not gonna be the like the most productive guy, but when it mattered, Derek came through. If you needed a hit to right field to bring in a runner from second, Derek was gonna get it. If you needed a home run at the right time, Derek, for whatever reason, was going to get it. There's something that separates from a DNA or just a mindset perspective. These guys who deliver when it matters. I remember A-Rod. You remember when before the Yankees won that 2009 World Series, A-Rod was bashing balls left and right because he was juiced to the max, but he couldn't deliver. Right, like the one thing to me steroids doesn't do is it doesn't do anything about your mindset. It doesn't do anything about your nerves. I don't care how strong you are. I don't care how fast your reflexes are. I don't care about the ball. When there are 40,000 fans snapping pictures, it's the bottom of the ninth, game 6 of a World Series. This hit wins it for you. I don't care how juiced up you are. Nothing helps you in that situation, man. That's DNA. That's maybe being there and learning from it and grit or whatever it is. But there's something that happens there that separates everyone. You remember Tiger, when Tiger had that crazy run and people would just go, his presence scared people. And it's the mental part of the game. Like these guys, we talked a little bit about it last episode, where to get to that level, you have to be so good. So then what separates you? And it's that the mental part separates you from everyone else. We're all equally as good from a talent perspective, maybe, right? Like we can all, you figure Steve Kerr was sitting shooting in a gym and he threw up 100 shots. He'd probably hit 90 of them, right? But at Steve Kerr, if you had to give him the ball with 3 seconds left, obviously he hits that game winner there. But like, how many times does Steve Kerr deliver on that? And how many times does MJ deliver on that? Like there's a difference between that. That I think separates the good, which everyone in professional sports is good, to the greats, and then the legendary, where you will go, give me the ball. And that was MJ. Give me the ball.
That's it. And on that note, another episode. Thanks for joining us on the Carbon Footprint.
Yeah.
We will hit you guys back up next week. Don't know what the topic is yet, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah, man, we'll just talk smack. If you guys have something that you want to hear us talk about, send it our way. Drop a comment. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. We'll put some stuff up everywhere. Email us, whatever you got to do. We'll drop the information when we post the episode. But yeah, thank you guys for listening.
Woo. Thanks.
Yep.